Hello, welcome back or welcome to Mystic Maiden Soap. So today is a much longer video than usual. I'm doing more of a step-by-step of how I make soap. Feel free to fast forward anytime you want to. So here I'm mixing out my water, measuring out my water and my lye beads. I always do my water first so water doesn't splash into any lye or anything like that already sitting out. So if you want to add sugar or salt to your bars after you measure out your water, you would add 1 teaspoon of either one or both to this water and stir until it's dissolved. So I place a lid on it, and I have vinegar on hand, which I use later, and you'll see, to clean everything. Yes, I measure my lye out into a Pyrex dish. Now, if you see, I open it over the measuring cup, and that's because sometimes little bits of lye get stuck on the rim or the lid, and this prevents them from falling on everything. And then I twist it back on over the cup. So I go outside and I slowly add it in. Now, this got kind of funky on me for some reason. Ignore what's floating in my container. It's my snake shed. But you see how it got kind of chunky? I've heard people say that they had a big disc of undissolved lye at the bottom of their container later. So as I was mixing this, and because this has never happened to me before, I ended up not recording the whole thing. But what happened is, as I added more of the lye beads and to my water, it heated up more, and then it all dissolved just fine. So you can add it all in slowly and then stir, which does create fumes and all of that. Or you can do it slowly like this and little bit by little bit and stir it in, which helps keep the temperature down. I tend to do it quicker than what I showed there. So you just stir it in until everything is dissolved. So all your lye is dissolved. You don't see any little flakes or beads hanging out attached to the side or anything like that. And then I very carefully, eventually, quit playing with things. Good gravy. So because I do snake shed, I try and get as much off the sides as possible and make sure it's off my spatula, which never fully happens. So then I make sure it's done dripping, and I set it in my container that had my lye, and then I carefully put on the lid, and I don't do it super tight, but I do it tight enough that if it were to fall, it won't spill everywhere. And then as it cools down, I will actually tighten the lid all the way and set it aside for the next day. So then I go inside and I take my vinegar, I spray everything down and wipe everything down. White vinegar helps negate the lye. This was a lot harder to do with one hand, but it helps negate the lye that you may have spilt. So that's why I use vinegar to clean up my mess. So now what I do is I mix my colorants the day prior, and you'll see what it looks like the first day that I mix it versus after letting it sit for a little bit. I always mix it with castor oil. I like how it looks on the top. It keeps it shiny, but that's a personal preference. You can use any oil. You can use some oils from your batch. My usual recipe has a whole lot of hard oils. So if I try and mix it with my batter oils, it tends to get too hard. And there I was sitting there going, I should have done red first instead of black. So I'm mixing Black Knight Mica from Wholesale Supplies Plus with some black iron oxide. I'm testing a design, colors, and a fragrance oil all in this recipe. And I did end up messing up my recipe. I added too much of my tallow and didn't realize it because my brain wasn't functioning. But it still ended up just fine, just a little more super fatted than it normally would be. So I actually measured all these out because I needed to know more specifically how much I needed per 2.25 pound mold. I still didn't add, I don't believe, enough of the carrier oil, but I didn't want to add too much because then it does add a super fat to your soap. And mine's pretty specific. So then I just sit here and I mix it, and you want to mix it slow and you want to mix it carefully. Otherwise, it poofs up. And nothing's worse than trying to get this black oxide or even black mica off your counters. It's a pain. So here you just see me carefully and slowly mixing it. This is, of course, everything's sped up. But it's actually kind of relaxing to do. So I try and push down any clumps or anything, but black oxide is very clumpy in general. So I actually ended up ordering a mica blender from Nurture Soap, and hopefully I could mix the black oxide with black mica. But look at how kind of chunky it is. You can see it doesn't flow smoothly. And hopefully with that mica blender I can mix it up so it's not as chunky. So you just sit and mix. And then I leave mine, like I said before, I leave mine to sit overnight. I think it helps the oil slowly penetrate the mica or oxides better so you don't end up with clumps. It's definitely not required, but that's just what I do. I found that works best for me. And this is New Tone Red from Wholesale Supplies Plus, which if you use the recommended usage amount, see it's still kind of clumpy, then it ends up being more of a pinkish red. I have some Trial by Fire coming from Nurture Soap, so hopefully that really is a true red, like everybody says. I'm hoping, because I need a red and black soap. I have to make 100 of those. So here we are, we're going to measure out the oils. Like I said, you can get oils just from the grocery store. You don't have to have specific special oils or butters or anything like that. You can get them from the store. As you can see, the majority of mine is lard. Makes for a nice slow moving recipe. It's very conditioning. We're not allowed to say moisturizing, but I think conditioning is kind of synonymous with that. Measure out some coconut oil. And if you haven't seen my video on the soap calculator, go check that out. It breaks it down to be really simple and easy. People tend to complicate it, and you can get into all the very detailed scientific parts. In all honesty, I just want to know how to be able to put oils in there and give me an idea of what the bar is going to be, how soon I can unmold, and if I'm at risk for rancidity, also known as dreaded orange spots or DOS. That's all I really want to know. I don't know. I think a lot of things just are repetitive on soap calc, but it has a lot of good information. So whatever calculator you like, go and play around in it. Start with one oil Now here we're going to do the fragrance oil. What I learned, these are 1 ounce bottles, but what I learned is tip it like that and make sure it lays flat against the opening of your bottle and you have less leaking on your bottle. All right, so now that everything's ready, I have all my additives in my oils. I have liquid goat's milk, coconut milk, and powdered buttermilk. And powdered buttermilk tends to get very hard and annoying. So what I do is I stick blend it until when I pull my bell out, there aren't any chunks on it, or as close as I can. When I have put kaolin clay in my soap, I did the same thing. So you can make your lye solution with equal parts lye and water and add the rest of your liquids in the form of milk, aloe juice, purees, things like that if you want. So you see me keep pulling my stick blender out, checking the bell. There's still good sized chunks on there, so I will keep stick blending. And then when it's where I want it, I'll go ahead and get ready for pouring in the lye solution. Now, if you do a 1-to-1 ratio, don't add salt or sugar, because that actually takes up some of the water that's in there to properly dissolve. And you will end up, if you're not careful, you can end up lye heavy if you're not adding any other liquids as well. See how much smoother that black was? And also the red, that's from allowing them to sit overnight. That's why I do it, because it just makes it better or easier for me. I don't have to worry about chunks. So my oils are at 102, which is a little higher than I normally soap. Now, here's the kicker. Everybody says you have to be within 10 degrees. No, you don't. No, you don't. My lye solution is at 71, 72. My oils are at 102. What I have learned from my own experimenting, and every recipe is different. Now, okay, we'll get back to that. Stick blending. 1001, 1002, stop, stir. Okay, and you just keep doing that until you reach emulsion. Now I pulled my blender out, I'm looking at the bell. It's not emulsified because it's still separating. So now back to the water temperatures. This is like deja vu for me. So what I've learned with my recipe is if my oils are hotter than my lye solution, it's fine. It actually kind of slows everything down for me. Now, if it's the other way around and my lye solution's hot, but my oils are cooler, then I tend to trace really fast. So play around with it. The whole, you have to be within 10 degrees. No, you don't. You don't. So play around with your recipe, see what works, what doesn't. But that's what I have found with mine. And so I don't necessarily have to wait for my oils to come down. My recipe also tends to move fast regardless. Once I start putting in colors and fragrance, it's on the fast track. But that's my recipe. There are really great slow moving recipes. I provided one. I will put it down in the description box again. So now I've reached emulsion. When you reach emulsion, you can look at your stick blender for a few seconds. Do it for like 10-15 seconds while you're still, stirring a little bit. And you won't see the oils in the lye solution separate. It will actually create a nice uniform film, for lack of better words, on your bell. Or you can use the back of a metal spoon, whatever makes it easier for you to see it. And that's when you know you reach emulsion. So I go to emulsion. I add my, split it off, add my colorants, hand stir my colorants in, knowing that that's not the true color it's going to be, because as soon as you zap it with a stick blender, it gets way better. And then I add my fragrance. The reason I do it this way is because if my fragrance is going to act a fool, whether it is with a mica, because some fragrances don't like certain micas for some reason, or if it's going to accelerate, if it's going to do any of that, I have time to stick blend. I have time to work with it. So I'm not freaking out and trying to shove batter into a mold. And see, I'm barely at emulsion. I'm like right on the edge of emulsion. You can tell because see how it covers it, but it still runs off, but it's not separating. So you don't see the separation. Lisa at I Dream in Soap has an amazing, very detailed video on reaching emulsion, thin trace, medium trace, and thick trace, and how to tell when you're there. I will try to also remember to link that. I'm really bad at linking things in the description. But she has an amazing video, and it helped me a lot when I first started. So I added my fragrance oil, stirred, and I was checking for anything. Any acceleration, any ricing, any misbehaving whatsoever. It actually did beautifully. So I'm comparing it to my red because my red doesn't have anything other than the colorant. And it's slightly thickening, but it's not to the point that I'm freaking out. So because I needed this to be semi-thick, more of like a medium trace, I did give it a quick zap with a stick blender, which I should not have done. I should have just waited like 30 seconds and it would have been fine. But I didn't. So you'll see in a little bit where it starts to really take off. And that is what I mean by my recipe moves quick as soon as fragrance oil is added. So you just pour, do whatever design you want to do. I absolutely love a chopstick swirl. And I just sit there and I alternate between the black and the red. And here in a few seconds, you'll actually see it. You can see it in the bowl. The black is starting to thicken. And the thicker it gets, now you can really tell because now I'm double handing the batters. You can see it kind of plopping out. And that's what I mean by that's acceleration. It's starting to move quick, but it's not unmanageable. But I always prepare for acceleration. And you can tell the more it accelerates, the higher up I go. So the colors penetrate further down. So they're not just sitting up on top. You can see I spilled down the side and on the edges. Soaping's messy. Nobody ever tells you that. It's messy. So now I'm just going to plop some on so I get some more black into that coloring. Because I'm doing a chopstick swirl, I'm not too worried about the stuff sitting on top because, watch, it gets swirled right in. Now I do halfway through. Ba-doop. And do that other little end part. Oh well, doesn't matter. I wanted to have a black top on this soap, and right about here is when I realized I messed up my recipe. I added too much oil because I'm going, I never have this much left over. Never. So I realized I had messed up one of my calculations. It still turned out fine. Like I said, it'll just be a little more super fatted. This is a soap that I will end up keeping because I absolutely love the smell. It's pheromone from Nature's Garden. Smells delicious. I have quite a few smells. It's very, I guess it'd be classified as masculine. Very cologne-like. It's a nice one. Now I'm just trying to get the extra in there, and my brain didn't compute until a little later that, oh, that's the one I added too much of. So if you have too much oil, it's all right. It'll just be a higher super fat. I've also had a batch where I only put in half the lye. So we do make mistakes. And that one actually didn't turn, I mean, it turned out, it solidified and everything, but it got DOS quick. So I've put a little of that leftover red mica with castor oil in there, and now I'm just playing in the top. This is probably one of the second most relaxing things. Other than mixing my mica, playing in the top is just fun. But then you gotta be careful that you don't overmix. And now notice when I slammed it down, it started going over the edges. And I'm gonna show you cleaning that up as well. Like I said, this is a long video, but I hear a lot of complaints of people going, oh, they're so clean when they soap, and oh, they just, you miss a lot. And it's because nobody wants to watch it, in all honesty. All of you guys will probably watch this once and be like, all right, cool. But you don't want to see this every time. It's boring. And this one I didn't put glitter on. I wish I could have, but these are actually, it's a test run for wedding soaps I'm doing for a custom order. So now I'm just trying to get the extra soap off the sides. I find that works a little better for me with a chopstick. A popsicle stick would probably do even better. And then I go and I wipe it all down, because I'm the one to grab, the mold, the silicone or whatever, to see how, if it needs to be unmolded yet or not, and then get crap all over my hands. So I try and get as much of that off as possible. Yeah, we all end up doing this. There is no clean soaping. Anybody that soaps perfect and clean, I don't know if I trust them. It's kind of like having a clean baker. Nah. Baking should be semi-messy. I'm not talking like flour everywhere, but there should be a little bit of mess. And that's how soaping is. So now you just wipe all the sides down. Just trying to even it out a little more. And that's it. We're done. So I did not do the cut, because you guys have seen cuts for a bajillion times. But here we go. Hope this helped. Have a great day.